In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey lies a place that has stunned archaeologists and historians alike. A site so ancient, so mysterious, that it has forced us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the origins of human civilization. This place is Göbekli Tepe, rising silently from the earth. Wow, its weathered stones tell a story older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge in England. With an age of more than 11,000 years, Göbekli Tepe is believed to be the oldest temple ever built by mankind. Discovered not far from the city of Şanlıurfa, once known as Edessa, this ancient monument sat undisturbed beneath layers of soil for thousands of years. Locals believed it was just a hill. No one imagined what lay beneath it, until 1994, when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavations and uncovered history buried in plain sight. Once people settled into farming communities, they had time to build temples and form religions. But Göbekli Tepe flips that idea on its head. This temple came before agriculture. Others see them as a form of early language of visual script to preserve spiritual knowledge. One enclosure features what appears to be a headless human surrounded by vultures, perhaps representing death or the soul's journey. Another shows animals engaged in dynamic action, as if telling a story lost to time. Ground-penetrating radar reveals that dozens more enclosures remain hidden beneath the surface. What lies beneath may rewrite history even further. In fact, some researchers believe it was religion, or at least a spiritual urge that motivated people to gather, organize, and eventually domesticate crops and animals. Others suggest astronomical alignments, or ancient knowledge of the stars, pointing to the site's potential use as an early observatory. It suggests that the roots of civilization may be spiritual rather than agricultural, that humans gathered not just for food or safety, but to connect with something greater than themselves. Visitors from around the world now come to walk among the pillars, to gaze upon carvings made by hands thousands of years ago. The Turkish government has invested in preservation, building a canopy to protect the site and launching educational programs to share its story. Göbekli Tepe may be the real cradle, where humans first organized around shared beliefs. The original name of the site, if it ever had one, is lost to history. The coming decades may reveal additional temples nearby, perhaps part of a network. Göbekli Tepe may be just one node in an ancient sacred landscape waiting to be understood. But its purpose, its power, and its majesty continue to speak to us across time. If so, it changes our understanding of who we are and where we come from. And as we gaze upon its ancient pillars, we are not looking at a forgotten ruin. We are staring into the soul of civilization itself. While mainstream archaeologists remain cautious, they agree that the site holds more secrets than answers. Human progress is not a straight line from simple to complex. Sometimes the deepest truths lie buried beneath the soil, waiting for a curious mind to dig. Who did it, and why? Some believe the burial was ceremonial, meant to preserve the sanctity of the temple. Some believe certain enclosures align with the stars or seasonal events. Could this have been a calendar? A tool to track time and celestial patterns? If true, it means even early humans were looking to the skies for meaning. Others suggest a cultural shift, perhaps a new religion, new beliefs, or changing ways of life led to its abandonment. Whatever the reason, the site remained hidden for millennia, a buried time capsule waiting to be unearthed. What he found would revolutionize our understanding of human development. We do not know the names of those who carved the stones, nor the gods they worshipped. We can only imagine them, lit by firelight, chanting into the night, raising stone monuments to the heavens. He believed it was a center of spiritual life, a sacred space unlike any other. Tragically, Schmidt passed away in 2014. But his work has inspired a new generation of archaeologists and historians to continue exploring this extraordinary place. It seems people traveled here for specific purposes, perhaps rituals, ceremonies, or feasts. Could Göbekli Tepe have been a pilgrimage site, sacred gathering point for distant tribes? If so, it may be the birthplace of organized religion itself. Imagine standing at a time long before the invention of the wheel, before writing, even before agriculture. The builders had no metal tools, no wheels, and yet they managed to quarry, shape, transport, and raise massive stones. The level of organization and manpower needed suggests a level of social cooperation not typically associated with hunter-gatherers. In this prehistoric landscape, small bands of hunter-gatherers roamed the earth. They survived by hunting animals and gathering wild plants, with no cities, no governments, and no temples. Yet Göbekli Tepe tells a different story, a story that challenges this traditional narrative. Massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons and standing 6 meters high, were carefully carved and arranged in circular enclosures. The pillars were not just functional, they were works of art, etched with images of animals like lions, scorpions, foxes, snakes, and vultures. Some even feature abstract symbols or humanoid shapes, suggesting spiritual or ritual meaning. These carvings were not random decorations. They held meaning, possibly sacred, possibly mystical. Each circular enclosure, often with 2 central pillars surrounded by others, seems to have been carefully planned. Even more shocking is what this site reveals about the timeline of civilization. For decades, historians believe that agriculture came first. Excavations at the site have shown no signs of permanent habitation. No homes, no daily tools, no signs of regular domestic life. The carvings on the pillars also add layers of mystery. Some believe they tell stories, myths passed down through generations. Interestingly, the site was intentionally buried around 8000 BCE. Klaus Schmidt, who dedicated his life to Göbekli Tepe, called it the first cathedral on Earth. Only a small fraction of the site has been excavated, less than 10%. Göbekli Tepe also attracts those fascinated by the mysteries of the ancient world. Some believe it's connected to a lost advanced civilization, or even Atlantis. In 2018, Göbekli Tepe was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has impacted more than just archaeology, it has shifted the way we see human history. It challenges the notion that civilization began in Mesopotamia, the so-called cradle of civilization. There's also the haunting beauty of its mystery. We do not know what the rituals looked like. Modern researchers are working to analyze the site's orientation and possible astronomical significance. Even the name Göbekli Tepe is modern. It means potbelly hill in Turkish. As new technologies like LiDAR and AI-based analysis enter the archaeological field, we may uncover even more secrets. Göbekli Tepe is a reminder that history is not linear. This temple of stone, older than our written stories, our cities, and even our gods, reminds us of the awe and mystery of our human journey. To understand the full magnitude of Göbekli Tepe, we need to go beyond the surface and delve into its layers, both physical and symbolic. What we see today, the pillars and enclosures uncovered by modern excavators, is only a fraction of what lies beneath. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed over 20 additional structures still buried beneath the soil. This raises an important question. How large was Göbekli Tepe really? Was it a single temple? A ceremonial complex? Or a sacred city sprawling across the hills? Excavations have revealed that the site was built in multiple layers. The oldest and most elaborate layers, level 3, contain the largest and most intricately decorated pillars. These shapes, believed to represent stylized human figures, always feature 2 larger pillars in the center, surrounded by smaller stones. Some of the central pillars have arms carved into their sides, with hands reaching toward their midsections. This humanoid imagery suggests that these stones may have represented gods, spirits, or even deified ancestors. No names, no written records, no direct links to any known ancient people have been found. They may represent early cosmology, an attempt to understand and depict the spiritual forces of the world. Just as it had been opened with ceremony, perhaps it was closed with reverence. This deliberate act left the site remarkably well preserved, allowing modern archaeologists to study it with great detail. One theory suggests that the animals carved into the pillars represent constellations, and that the entire site served as a kind of astronomical map for the Egyptian pyramids. Constructed around 2500 BCE, others suggest that Göbekli Tepe is part of a wider network of spiritual sites that once dotted the landscape of the ancient world. Could it be that long before Mesopotamia, long before Egypt, there was a religious culture that stretched across continents? These are marvels of human ingenuity, but they came thousands of years after Göbekli Tepe. It's a testament to the power of human imagination, the ability to conceive of gods, spirits, and worlds beyond our own. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were working with stone tools, in a world that hadn't yet discovered writing or metallurgy. And yet, they created one of the most sophisticated ritual landscapes in human history. They show that ancient people were not only capable of spiritual thought, but also of abstract reasoning. Around 8000 BCE, the site was carefully filled with debris, mostly broken tools, animal bones, and loose stone. This was not an act of destruction, it was an act of preservation. But why? Did the people believe the place had fulfilled its purpose? Were they trying to protect it from something? Or was a new belief system taking over, rendering the old one obsolete? They could look at the sky and see patterns, see meaning. They could imagine forces beyond their world and seek to connect with them through sacred space. In this view, Göbekli Tepe could have helped early humans track time, seasons, and celestial events. Others believe the temple was a meeting point for various tribes across the region, a place where culture, myth, and ritual converged. Sirius held great importance in many ancient cultures, including the Egyptians. Could Göbekli Tepe be the first temple to the stars? Perhaps it was the religious need to gather and perform sacred rites that led to social organization. And eventually, the domestication of animals and plants. The builders were prehistoric hunter-gatherers who lived in small communities. Yet the site's sophistication suggests they organized themselves on a much larger scale. Could this mean that humans were capable of complex cooperation far earlier than once thought? These are the iconic T-shaped monoliths arranged in circular formations. Above this, younger layers level to suggest smaller, less elaborate structures. The scale of the monument required planning, labor, and resources. Workers needed to be fed, organized, and motivated. It was possible that agriculture was developed out of necessity to feed those who came to build or worship at the site. If true, religion didn't follow farming. Farming followed belief. Over time, it seems the builders changed their techniques and perhaps even their religious practices. This transition gives us a glimpse into a society in motion, changing, evolving, perhaps struggling with new ideas or beliefs. But who built Göbekli Tepe? That question remains one of the site's biggest mysteries. Some scholars suggest that the builders belonged to early Neolithic societies who were experimenting with agriculture. Göbekli Tepe might have acted as a catalyst for civilization itself. One of the most remarkable aspects of the site is the uniformity of its design. The T-shaped pillars appear across multiple enclosures. The symbolism doesn't end there. The carvings on the stones are not just decorative. Some enclosures appear aligned with the stars. Notably, enclosure D may have been oriented toward the rising of the star Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Such interpretations are speculative, but they open exciting possibilities. Another interesting feature of Göbekli Tepe is its intentional burial. Some archaeologists suggest the burial was part of a ritual closure, kind of sacred shutting down of the site. To understand just how revolutionary Göbekli Tepe is, we must place it in context with other ancient sites. Consider Stonehenge in England, built around 3000 BCE. This revelation has led some to propose radical ideas. Perhaps there was an earlier, lost civilization, one with knowledge that was passed down to later societies. Mainstream scholars remain cautious. They point to the lack of concrete evidence for a global prehistoric civilization. But even without such claims, Göbekli Tepe remains extraordinary. Let's now turn our attention to the people who built Göbekli Tepe. Though we may never know their names or languages, we can infer much from what they left behind. They tracked animal migrations, understood weather patterns, and knew where to find edible plants. But Göbekli Tepe tells us they were also concerned with the unseen world, with the afterlife, spirits, and gods. This kind of thinking shows a mental leap, a capacity for abstract and symbolic thought far ahead of its time. These builders lived during the pre-pottery Neolithic period, a time before clay vessels, metallurgy, or writing. Tools were made of flint and obsidian. This has led some scholars to suggest that beer may have been invented before bread, and that it played a role in religious rituals. Tool marks show how stone was shaped with flint tools, then moved somehow across uneven ground. The region around Göbekli Tepe was quite different 11,000 years ago. It was greener with more rainfall and wild vegetation. Herds of wild animals roamed the plains. The people who came here were surrounded by a rich, living landscape. This environment may have been considered sacred, in itself a paradise, a gift from the gods. There were no carts, no oxen. How did they move 10 to 20-ton monoliths? And eventually, the people who once sang and danced beneath its pillars were gone. Their descendants may have walked past the buried hill, unaware of what their ancestors had built. Theories range from wooden rollers to sledges pulled by dozens of people. How could such an important site, a place of pilgrimage and worship, be lost to history? Regardless of the method, the sheer scale of effort is staggering. As agriculture spread and permanent settlements emerged, new belief systems took root. New gods, new rituals, and new social orders replaced the old. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe represented a way of life that was no longer needed immobile. Nature-based, tribal spirituality that didn't fit the new world of farming and city building. If so, then the world's first temple may also have been the world's first sacred brewery. Generation after generation returned to the site, contributing to its structures and maintaining its sanctity. The construction may have become part of their cultural identities, something passed from parent to child, like language or myth. Excavations show remains of wild animals, gazelles, boars, birds, snakes, and onagers. The earth warmed after the last ice age, and new environmental pressures emerged. Some believe this climatic shift may have influenced the decline of sites like Göbekli Tepe. Changing weather patterns, decreasing animal populations, and increased human activity could have led to environmental stress. As ecosystems changed, so did human beliefs, rituals, and the way they organized society. Bones from feasts lie scattered across the site, suggesting that ceremonial gatherings may have included large meals. Some of the bones were broken open, possibly for marrow extraction, indicating detailed knowledge of food processing. These were not mindless builders. They were intelligent, resourceful, and methodical. Clothing was likely made from animal skins or woven plant fibers. Life was harsh, uncertain, and yet remarkably deeply spiritual. This wasn't a kingdom or an empire. These were small bands of people who likely volunteered for something they believed in. That speaks volumes. Religion or shared belief was powerful enough to bring people together for immense tasks without coercion. It may have been the first social glue, idea that bound groups together in harmony and common cause. Their survival depended on their knowledge of the natural world. So, how did they manage such monumental construction? Some researchers believe that Göbekli Tepe was not built all at once, but over centuries, maybe even 1,000 years. No evidence of forced labor or slavery has been found. And what of the diet of these ancient builders? We also find early evidence of brewing fermented grains used to make a crude form of beer. Another mystery lies in the stone itself. The limestone used for the pillars was quarried nearby. Let's not forget the climate. But over time, that paradise began to change. One of the most profound questions Göbekli Tepe raises is, why did we forget about it for thousands of years? The answer may lie in the evolution of culture itself. In time, its rituals faded. The memory of the temple faded. It would take over 10,000 years and the curiosity of a German archaeologist for their story to resurface. The rediscovery of Göbekli Tepe in the 1990s sent shockwaves through the world of archaeology. Until then, the prevailing belief was that monumental architecture and religion were the products of settled societies. And that changes the origin story of civilization. The temple did not follow the village followed the temple. Perhaps we didn't settle down just to grow crops and raise livestock. Perhaps we did it to gather, worship, and connect with something larger than ourselves. This is a radical reversal that has forced scholars to rethink everything about the timeline of human development. In other words, humans had to first invent farming and build cities before they could think about gods. Göbekli Tepe shattered that model, showed us that spiritual complexity, rituals, temples, religious symbols emerged before farming. They represent creatures that would have played a significant role in the worldview of hunter-gatherers. Foxes, boars, vultures, lions, these were animals of power and mystery. They may have been spirit guides, totems, or symbols of tribal clans. In some cases, they might represent constellations or mythic forces. Göbekli Tepe became the smoking gun. In a debate about whether humans first evolved as economic creatures or spiritual ones, thousands of years after it was built, it was not simply forgotten, it was intentionally buried. And now, it stands as a bridge between the distant past and the present, offering us a glimpse into a time when humans were just beginning to find their voice. Some suggest this was done to preserve its sacredness. Others think it marked a change in belief or leadership. Maybe new gods replaced old ones. Maybe a natural disaster prompted the closure. Or maybe it was buried as part of a ritualo-symbolic death for a sacred site. Others see a connection with later mythologies where vultures guide souls to the afterlife. This animistic worldview, where everything in nature has a soul, may be the root of early religion, calendrical systems. Nobody knows for sure. But they are deliberate, precise, and repeated across the site. They meant something to the builders. To us, they are a puzzle. Another shows what looks like a decapitated manna, possible reference to sacrifice, punishment, or transformation. It is a meeting point of human curiosity, a temple that continues to inspire awe long after its stones fell silent. This idea aligns with a broader theory in anthropology known as the ritual precedence hypothesis. It argues that ritual was the first social glue bringing people together, forming communities and giving meaning to life and death. They showed depth, motion, anatomy, and emotion. Whoever carved them was not just skilled but trained, perhaps even specialized. This hints at a division of labor, and therefore, a more complex society than we previously believed existed in 9600 BCE, from documentary filmmakers to researchers in ancient astronomy, from spiritual pilgrims to skeptics, everyone is drawn to this mysterious hill. The city of Konlirfa, just a short drive away, is believed in Islamic tradition to be the birthplace of Prophet Abraham. Some even suggest that Göbekli Tepe lies near the biblical Garden of Eden, an idea popularized by some religious scholars and authors. Why? Because it touches something primal. It asks questions we all share. Where did we come from? What did our ancestors believe? What did they see in the stars? Göbekli Tepe is now seen as the oldest physical evidence of that hypothesis. The site has become a focal point for global interest. Even the broader region around Göbekli Tepe is steeped in historical and mythical significance. This spiritual overlap adds another layer of meaning. Göbekli Tepe becomes not just a prehistoric monument, but a crossroads of mythologies, ancient and modern, religious and scientific. Let's talk about the carvings again. The animals that adorn the pillars are not random. One particularly famous carving shows a vulture with a disca motif that has led some to speculate about sun worship or cosmic symbolism. These symbols are deeply evocative. They suggest a world in which animals and humans were not separated by culture, but bound together by myth and meaning. And then there are the abstract symbols, circles, crescents, H-shapes, and hands. Are these early alphabets, proto-languages? The artistry of the carvings is another surprising aspect. These are not crude etchings. Göbekli Tepe is also remarkable for what it tells us about memory. Regardless of the reason, this burial preserved the temple in pristine condition for future generations to find. As archaeologists dug deeper into Göbekli Tepe, something unexpected happened. The site didn't become clear, it became more mysterious. Each new discovery raised more questions than it answered. That's the paradox of Göbekli Tepe. The closer we look, the more we realize how little we know. Imagine life in 9600 BCE. No cities, no borders, no currency. Life is uncertain. Of placing ancestral spirits into stone to stand watch over the living. This might explain the solemn, almost reverent positioning of the stones, two large pillars in the center, facing each other like guardians or gods, encircled by others like worshippers. Disease, injury, and wild animals are constant threats. But in the face of this chaos, the builders of Göbekli Tepe raised something: stable stone pillars that didn't move, that didn't rot, that could last forever. Others suggest that carvings on the same pillar may represent sequences, perhaps even a form of proto-narrative. If true, then Göbekli Tepe may not just be a temple, it may be a prehistoric library, a sanctuary of memory and myth. It declares to the world, this is where we reach for the gods. In a world of impermanence, they built for eternity. Rivers flowed through the valleys. Wild wheat grew on the slopes. Tribes may have traveled for days or weeks to reach it. The arrival of distant visitors would have brought news, gifts, and trade. They carefully filled it, preserved it, sealed it, and left it for the earth to guard. Until a man named Klaus Schmidt, guided by curiosity and intuition, pulled back the layers of soil and brought history back to light, language would have evolved. Myths would have spread. Göbekli Tepe may have acted as a cultural crossroad, a place where ideas as well as people came together. This natural abundance may have contributed to its selection as a sacred space. Or perhaps the temple was built to honor the land's generosity, to ensure its continued blessings. The consistency in design, placement, and scale hints at standards rules that were understood and followed. Göbekli Tepe isn't in a valley or next to a river. It's perched high above the plains, visible from far away. That may not be an accident. Height has always held spiritual significance. Mountains and hills bring us closer to the heavens. They allow us to look outward, to the horizon, to the stars, to the divine. Perhaps people no longer needed to gather in one place. They had fields to tend, homes to build. The temple may have become a burden rather than a blessing. This is the beginning of symbolic systems which would later evolve into writing. Göbekli Tepe may not be a place of books, but it is certainly a place of meaning. Were their songs passed down through generations? The lack of writing leaves us only with clues, but human beings have always been storytellers. Göbekli Tepe is, in many ways, a story carved into stone. Why was it built? Who organized the labor? What were the rituals? And most haunting of all, what did it all mean to those who created it? To begin answering these questions, we must step into the minds of the builders. Its central pillars are the tallest, majestic, almost regal. Their surfaces are smooth, and they seem to project presence. They don't just stand, they watch. They bear witness. Perhaps that's why the pillars are shaped like humans. It was a way of making memory permanent, of ensuring the dead were not forgotten. The arrangement of the pillars, the acoustics within the circle, the alignment with certain celestial bodies all suggest a ritual space designed not just for structure, but for experience. It's not hard to imagine early humans gathering inside the circle at night, firelight dancing on the carvings, chanting or drumming echoing off the stone. The layout of the enclosures appears purposeful. Enclosure D, the best preserved and most studied, has carvings of animals in motion. There's an intelligence to the design that goes beyond engineering. But what about the people who participated? Who were the priests, the shamans, the leaders? Were there sacred texts spoken by memory? Some researchers believe that certain symbols repeat across the site, indicating shared cultural meanings. Interestingly, the carvings also suggest a kind of visual language. Let us also consider the symbolic significance of its hilltop location. So it makes sense that a sacred place would be built on high ground, and what of the landscape around it? The region now appears dry and arid, but it was once rich with wildlife and vegetation. Now, imagine the site over time. What began as a few enclosures may have grown into a pilgrimage destination. Eventually, though, something changed. New beliefs may have taken hold. New technologies like farming may have shifted social priorities, so they buried it. They didn't destroy it. They didn't dismantle it. And so it remained hidden, forgotten until the modern era, till the 20th century. In the vast world of archaeology, few figures have left as profound a legacy as Dr. Klaus Schmidt. The German archaeologist who uncovered Göbekli Tepe, born in 1953, Schmidt was a quiet, thoughtful man with a passion for early human history. He saw carved stones, just the tops of pillars poking from the earth. But the shape, the size, and the feel of them struck him as ancient, far older than anything known in the region. It was intuition at first, but he knew he was standing on something big. Before Göbekli Tepe, he had already worked on other Neolithic sites in Turkey, but nothing could have prepared him for what he would find in the hills near Kanal Urfa. He often said that discovering it was like finding the first cathedral of humankind. He knew he was not just rewriting textbooks, he was changing the way we see ourselves. In 1994, while surveying an area that had previously been dismissed as insignificant, Schmidt noticed something others had overlooked. Tourists can walk elevated pathways, gaze down at the sacred circles, and imagine the rituals that once took place there. And yet, the excavation remains active each year. New discoveries are made, tools, carvings, walls, bones all, slowly painting a clearer picture of life 12,000 years ago. His death was sudden, a heart attack while vacationing with his wife. The archaeology community mourned, and tributes poured in from across the globe. The site had actually been noted earlier by Turkish archaeologists in the 1960s, but they assumed it was a medieval cemetery or a Byzantine ruin. The site has grown in fame and importance. It has been featured in documentaries, books, podcasts, and academic journals. It will require patience, cooperation, and humility. As Schmidt often said, you must listen to the stones. They have a story to tell. In 2018, Göbekli Tepe was officially designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognizing its value to all of humanity.
It wasn't he.
Until Schmidt began formal excavations that the true age of Göbekli Tepe began to emerge. Radiocarbon dating placed it at 9,600 BCE, instantly making it the oldest known religious site on Earth. It connects modern Turkey to the dawn of human civilization. That humans gathered to build this temple long before they ever planted a single seed. It was a controversial idea at the time, but the evidence supported it. Schmidt spent the next 2 decades devoted to Göbekli Tepe. Under the hot Turkish sun, he and his team unearthed massive circular enclosures, each with its own secrets. He worked patiently, methodically, slowly revealing the lost story of a forgotten people. There were no hearths, no houses, no trash pits. This was not where people lived, it was where they worshipped. A temple in the truest and sacred ground, separated from everyday life. He believed in preserving the site just as much as he believed in exploring it. Only a fraction was excavated under his leadership, less than 10% of the site, but that was enough to change the world. Schmidt didn't just dig, he interpreted. He offered a bold theory that shocked the academic world: religion came before farming. He also insisted that Göbekli Tepe was not a village. For Klaus Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe was not just a dig site, it was a calling. Tragically, Schmidt passed away in 2014, just as the world was beginning to appreciate the full magnitude of his work, but his legacy lives on. Today, Turkish archaeologists, supported by international experts, continue the work he started. A modern visitor center was built near the site, and protective roofing now shelters the exposed enclosures. The Turkish government has also invested heavily in promoting Göbekli Tepe as a national treasure. It is not just an archaeological site, it is a source of pride. And still, we have only scratched the surface. Beneath the soil, dozens of enclosures remain hidden. The work ahead will take decades, perhaps centuries. Indeed, they do. As with any groundbreaking discovery, Göbekli Tepe has not been immune to speculation and controversy. The site's extreme age and mysterious nature have attracted a wide range of interpretations, some scholarly, and others more speculative. It was likely a pilgrimage site where hunter-gatherer groups came together to worship, share myths, and forge alliances. Its presence may have even led to the development of agriculture in the surrounding region. Let's explore the theories and debates that have surrounded this ancient temple. They argue that while Göbekli Tepe was certainly important, it might have been part of a more complex settlement system. Perhaps nearby domestic sites still buried or undiscovered may show evidence of early farming, housing, and food storage. However, the very fact that Göbekli Tepe predates all known writing systems means we must interpret symbols rather than read them. Were they simply artistic depictions, or did they serve as totems, symbols of tribes or spirits, or even representations of celestial bodies? Some researchers suggest that the scorpion and vulture motifs may relate to constellations. Others believe they reflect shamanistic visions or religious myths shared by the builders. This leaves the door open for multiple, sometimes conflicting understandings. Was this a site of ritual sacrifice? Was decapitation symbolic, representing spiritual rebirth or transformation? Or could it have been a visual metaphor for the soul leaving the body? In this view, Göbekli Tepe was not the starting point of civilization, but one piece of a much larger puzzle. The consistent design, repeated symbols, and formal layout of the enclosures suggest rules and traditions hallmarks of institutionalized belief. It shows that early humans were not just surviving, they were thinking, believing, and creating. Could this be the birthplace not only of temples, but of priesthoods, of ritual hierarchies, and of theological order? A comet impact that occurred around 10,800 BCE, which coincides with the onset of the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions. According to this theory, Göbekli Tepe is a celestial record, a warning from the past encoded in stone. The most widely accepted academic theory, led by Klaus Schmidt and many in the archaeological community, holds that Göbekli Tepe was a ceremonial center for pre-pottery Neolithic people. However, some scholars are skeptical of this religion-first theory. Then there are the alternative theorists, authors, and researchers who believe Göbekli Tepe could be proof of lost civilizations, advanced ancient knowledge, or even contact with extraterrestrials. These ideas are not accepted by mainstream science, but they speak to the human imagination, who suggests that Göbekli Tepe may be the legacy of an advanced civilization that was wiped out at the end of the last ice age, possibly by a comet or flood. He proposes that survivors of this lost culture passed on their knowledge to the hunter-gatherers of the region, including how to construct megalithic sites like Göbekli Tepe. After all, when we face a mystery so deep and old, it's only natural to search for extraordinary explanations. One of the most popular alternative theories comes from authors like Graham Hancock, and others also argue that the carvings on the pillars may represent astronomical events. Specifically, mainstream scientists caution against such interpretations, pointing out the lack of hard evidence and the dangers of projecting modern ideas onto prehistoric societies.
Brennan bending at it, but red, but I'm praying and bad with power, way and battery and of time, or diary, red, dress, like Sarada, for rear, and to memoir to rare, what commence with a
The presence of headless human figures on some pillars has led to further questions. Still others see in Göbekli Tepe the roots of organized religion itself. As new data emerges, the debates will continue. But what everyone agrees on is this: Göbekli Tepe is forcing us to rethink the narrative of history. And perhaps that is the most important revelation of all, that from the very beginning, humanity has sought meaning in the unknown. As we draw our journey to a close, we return to a simple but profound idea. Göbekli Tepe is more than a ruin. It is a mirror, one that reflects not just the people who built it, but the enduring truths of what it means to be human. When we walk among those ancient stones, we're not just tourists or scholars, we're witnesses to the very birth of belief. These pillars, carved and erected over 11,000 years ago, speak to a moment in time when humans first began to ask questions bigger than survival. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What lies beyond death? It is the first evidence of the human soul, etched into limestone by hands that had never seen a city, never read a book, never known civilization as we understand it. And yet, they understood something eternal: the need for connection, for meaning, for sacred space. These are not scientific questions. They are spiritual ones. And Göbekli Tepe proves that such questions have been with us from the beginning. In that sense, Göbekli Tepe is not just the oldest temple in the world. They were the first to look beyond the horizon, and in doing so, they lit the fire of civilization. Its builders had no empires, no currency, no kings. Before the plow there was a hill in Turkey, and yet they created something that endured for over 10,000 years. Something that outlived all the great civilizations that followed. Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Rome, they all rose and fell while Göbekli Tepe slept beneath the soil. In the shared work of hands guided by faith, we will never know their prayers. But we know their spirit because it lives on in us, the quiet power of people who, though they had no written language, carved their beliefs so deeply into the earth that we can still hear them whisper today. And perhaps that is its final lesson. That greatness is not always measured in gold or conquest. Sometimes it is measured in silence and the stillness of stone beneath the stars. We'll never know their names. In every temple built, in every monument raised, and every question asked beneath a night sky, their legacy continues. Today, Göbekli Tepe stands not as a relic, but as a beginning of story, a beginning of memory, a beginning of us. So the next time you look up at the stars or walk through the ruins of an ancient place, remember, long before the pyramids, before the Bible, and on that hill, stone pillars stood, watching, waiting, not for answers, but for rediscovery. And now we have found them.